Almost every photograph that sold you on Bellagio was taken from a spot most visitors never stand in. Inside a garden, out on the water, off the tip of the headland. But the real problem isn't where those pictures were taken, it's when. There's a version of this town that looks like them, and there's a version that's a slow crowd on a staircase. The standard run-up from Milan drops you into the second one and leaves before the first one starts. So you pay for a full day here and see the worst 3 hours of it. The window is roughly 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and it belongs to the boats. That's when the fast service out of Como lands, when the coaches feeding the ferry piers have finished their run, and when the mid-lake triangle is shuttling people back and forth across the same 15 minutes of water. Outside those hours, the same streets are close to empty. Packed during the day, dead in the evening. That's the complaint. Take the second half as a schedule. The people who come away calling this place a crush have all met it inside the same 6 hours, because the day trip from Milan is built to make sure they do. So take the early window first, because it's the one almost nobody plans for. Somebody who lives on the lake put the whole town at about 2 hours, and if you're only walking the streets, it's closer to 1. That number is what changes the shape of a day here. Bellagio is about 2 hours long, and the rest of the day is a separate question entirely. What you're walking is 9 pedestrian lanes running between the waterfront and Via Garibaldi up on top, and most of them climb in steps. Salita Serbelloni is the wide one everybody photographs, and it's also the one with the shops, which matters because the shops don't open until around 10, and 10 is exactly when you want to be somewhere else. Early gets you the town with nobody in it and nothing open, and I'd take that trade every single time. One warning before you commit anyone else to it. Those lanes are steps, hundreds of them, and if there are bad knees in your group, the upper town is hard work. And if you get down there before the shops open, with an hour still to burn, walk out to Punta Spartivento at the very tip of the headland. It costs nothing, it's a short walk down from the church square, and the lake splits into 3 right in front of you. The name means the point that divides the wind, and the wind does exactly that here. 2 winds run this lake every day. The Tivano comes down from the north at dawn and dies off by mid-morning, and then the Breva pushes back up from the south all afternoon. Cargo boats used to sail down to Como on the morning wind and come home on the afternoon one. So the water is glass at 8 and chopping up by 2, which is one more thing here, keeping the same hours as everything else. Which leaves the middle of the day, and this is the part the standard trip gets wrong. Between 10 and 4, you've got 3 real options, and they separate on price. The free one is a walk the town signs for you, out over the neck of the headland to the hamlets on the far shore. You drop down into Pescallo, an old fishing village on the Lecco arm, with small boats on buoys and no tourist frontage at all, then round to Loppia, where there's a plain Romanesque church and a beach with the traditional Lario boats moored off it, and out to San Giovanni, a cluster of houses at the water with a small museum of navigation instruments in it. The whole signed loop runs about 2 hours, which is precisely the window you're trying to fill, and it costs nothing. If the weather turns while you're out there, the Basilica di San Giacomo, back in the Borgo Quarter, is free and open through the day, a Romanesque church from around 1100 with a Foppa triptych inside. The paid option is Villa Melzi. The gardens went in between 1808 and 1813 for Francesco Melzi di Rio, who was vice president of Napoleon's Italian Republic, and they run about half a mile along the shore on flat ground, which is a relief after all those steps. Now remember the photographs. The avenue of plane trees that shows up in half of them starts at the villa's own boat dock, because the garden was laid out to be arrived at by boat. Down by the lake there's a small Moorish pavilion, where, as the story goes, Liszt worked on part of his Dante symphony. And the third option you have to book ahead. The Serbelloni Park covers about 50 acres of the headland directly above the town. It's owned by the Rockefeller Foundation, and you can't walk into it on your own. There are 2 guided tours a day. At 11 and half past 3, they cap it at 30 people, and you book at the info point on the church square. Give it 2 hours, and the first of them is straight uphill. They also cancel in bad weather, so it's the one I'd build a day around instead of squeezing into one. 2 of those 3 cost money, and if you want to know where it's worth spending on a lake like this one, the guide I use for exactly that is linked in the description, along with the tour operators I'd actually book with. Every one of those three assumes you can get here and get out again, and the boats are where a good Lake Como plan comes apart. It starts at the Como end. You can't buy a fast ferry ticket on board, so it's the ticket office or online, and in the warm months they sell out early enough that people who turn up before 8 in the morning still watch two departures go from inside the queue. Which is why the next bit matters, and three separate people described it in nearly the same words. The moment you step off the boat in Bellagio, walk straight into the ticket office and buy your return. Do it before you do anything else. People come back 40 minutes ahead of the boat they want and spend all 40 of those minutes queuing for a ticket, and then they queue again for the boat, and that's how you end up stranded in a town whose last service home has already gone. There's a second half to that, which a local explained to me. The Bellagio pier runs one queue for both directions, so the crew will put you on whatever boat has just pulled in when your turn comes up. If it's heading to Menaggio before Varenna, you still get where you're going, with a stop on the way. They do it to keep the line moving, which is worth knowing before you argue with anybody about it. Since you're choosing anyway, the fast boat costs meaningfully more than the slow one, and it has no outside seating, so you're paying extra to watch the lake through a window, which also settles the private boat question. If you were thinking about hiring one to see the villas, the ferry is already doing that tour. The big houses face the water and hide behind walls and trees from the road, so you get the view either way. One traveler paid €900 for 2 hours of it. Villa del Balbianello, the one out of Casino Royale, is a 10 to 20 minute hop over to Leno and then a walk or a small boat from the dock, and the tickets are timed and sell out in season. The last thing about the boats is the one that eats an evening. The run down the length of the lake to Como on the slow service takes over 3 hours, and the fast one does it in about 40 minutes. So look at how you're getting back before you decide how you're getting out, and if you're coming across from Varenna, the 15-minute hop to Bellagio to pick up a fast boat beats 3 hours on a slow one. The passenger boats stop earlier than you'd expect, and that one fact is why so many people write Bellagio off as a lunch stop. In summer, the last slow boat down to Como goes around 6:30, and the last fast one around 20 to 8. Look at that timetable, and dinner in Bellagio seems impossible unless you're already sleeping in Bellagio. That's exactly the conclusion people reach, and one of them asked about a water taxi home and got quoted €200 to €300. Whether it's true depends entirely on where you're sleeping, and there's a second boat almost nobody looks at. The car ferry, the stubby working one with cars on the deck, loops Bellagio, Varenna, Cadenabia, and Menaggio roughly every 20 to 30 minutes until about 10:30 at night in summer. It takes foot passengers, and you buy the ticket at the pier or on board. The first time I worked that out, I'd already spent an evening planning around the passenger timetable as if it were the only one that existed. If you're staying anywhere on that loop, you can eat dinner in Bellagio and get home on a boat for the price of an ordinary ticket. If you're down at Leno or further south, you genuinely can't, and that's where the water taxi quotes come from. Either way, don't come expecting a night out. The lake is built for day tourism and it closes after dinner, so book a night on the lake because none of this works from Milan. 7 different people in one forum gave the same warning, and the sharpest version of it was not to run this as a day trip twice on separate days because you'll spend the best hours of both days on a train. So where? Varenna is the answer more people give than any other, and always for the same reason. There's a direct train out of Milano Centrale, no changes, about an hour, and it drops you a short ferry hop from everything in the middle of the lake. It's also more vertical and more colorful than Bellagio, if that matters to you. Menaggio is the flat one, which is worth more on this lake than it sounds, and it has more buses down to Como. Como itself is cheaper and the easiest to reach. An opinion on whether the town is worth anything splits about evenly. Bellagio is the livelier base with the better evening, and it comes with one catch that's easy to miss until it bites. Choosing it means relying on a ferry to reach a train, and ferries stop running in high wind and storms. If you've got a flight to catch, that's a live risk, and the steps you walked at 8 in the morning are the steps you'll drag a suitcase up at night. So book low if you book here. If you're driving instead, take the smallest car you can live with and book somewhere with parking. The road along the lake is beautiful, and it's narrow and it winds, and every person who defends driving here says the same thing, which is to give it far more time than the map suggests. If this has already saved you an argument about which town to book, a like genuinely helps. Eat up the steps and drink down at the water. That's the rule somebody who stayed here gave me, and I've ignored it exactly once on a waterfront terrace for a plate I don't remember. The tables under the arcade with the lake right in front of them are worth the price of a spritz at 6 in the evening, and that view is what you're paying for. The meal itself happens on the top street. Sorting it is easier than it sounds. Every restaurant posts its menu outside with the prices on it, tax and tip included, so you can walk the top street the day before and decide in advance without anyone hovering over you. And lunch is cheaper than dinner almost everywhere in Italy, which lines up neatly with the fact that you're going to be in town at lunchtime anyway. As for what to order, Toc is the one that belongs to Bellagio, polenta cooked down with butter and cheese, and you won't see much of it off this stretch of the lake. Perch risotto is the classic here, and the local version is worth knowing. The fillets go into butter with sage until they're golden, then over the rice with the butter poured on and Parmesan to finish, no saffron anywhere near it. Misoltini is dried salted lake shad, grilled, served with polenta, and dressed with oil and vinegar. It's a preservation method, and it tastes like one, so order it because you want to know, not because you want a nice dinner. Levorello is the gentler whitefish, if that sounds like too much, and book ahead in season. All of it rests on when you come. Whether the boats are running, whether the gardens are open, whether you can get a table, whether you can stand to be outside at 2 in the afternoon, the month settles all four. The answer people give is September into the first week or two of October, and it isn't close. The most liked comment I found on the whole subject was somebody saying to go off season, because during the summer holidays it's far too crowded and afterward the weather is still good. Asked to be specific, they said the beginning of September would be perfect, and 5 or 6 others landed independently on the same few weeks. But there's a hardback edge to it. Villa Melzi shuts for the season in the middle of October. The Serbelloni tours wind down around the same time, and the little tourist train that loops the town runs until the start of November. Come in late October and you get the good weather and the empty streets with half of what you came to do behind a locked gate. So aim for the first half of the month if you're going that late. As for what you're avoiding, mid-August is the crunch, and the reason is better than school holidays. A local explained that the corridor between Milan and the lake is full of manufacturing, steel and textiles, and those factories all shut production in the middle weeks of August, so the whole area empties onto the lake on top of the foreign visitors. People reported 2-hour ferry queues that week, standing in direct sun. The heat is real too. High 80s and low 90s through most of that month, and worse in a bad week, and the nights don't cool off much. Rain worries people more than it should. Summer storms here are short and violent, over in an hour or two, and the ferries are covered. The real problem is that foreign weather apps are useless on this lake because the north end and the south end can have completely different weather on the same afternoon. People here use 3B Meadow or the Italian Air Force Service instead. And in winter, a lot of the hotels and restaurants simply close until spring. This Camarides, I'd take a morning and an evening here over any full day you could hand me. Get down to the waterfront before the shops open, walk the steps while they're still empty, and go out to the point where the lake splits and watch the light come off flat water with about 6 other people for company. Then be somewhere else for 6 hours, on a garden path or a boat or the far side of the headland. Come back around 7, eat up the steps, and take the last car ferry home across black water with the lights of 3 towns strung out on it. That's the town in the photographs. It was there the whole time. It just doesn't keep the same hours as the boat that brought you. And almost everyone who tells you Bellagio is overrated met it at noon.